The following are the explanation about the transmission of infectious disease through contact. The disease transmitted through contact and caused by fungi. For example, ringworm, and we may call it as tinea. The infection of ringworm can occur when an individual contact with the patients who infected with the disease. For example, touch the skin of patients, or use the towel of the patients. Diseases like AIDS, syphilis, and gonorrhea live in body fluids of humans, such as vaginal fluid and semen can be transmitted through sexual intercourse, open wounds, from a mother to her child in the womb, and blood transfusion. AIDS also can be spread when the syringe is shared in among the patients and drug addicts. This is about the disease that transmitted through vector. Pathogens need a vector to transfer from one host to another. Vectors are animals that transfer the pathogens, such as mosquitoes, rats, flies, cockroaches, and lice. The diseases transmitted through vector are as follows. The first is malaria, which is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquito. Dengue, which is transmitted through the bite of Aedes aegypti mosquito. Zika, which is transmitted through the bite of Aedes aegypti mosquito, or Aedes albopictus mosquito. Cholera, which is transmitted through food and water contamination by fly. Typhoid, which is transmitted through food and water contamination by fly or cockroach. Leptospirosis, which is transmitted through food, water, soil contamination by rat. We will detail these vector-borne diseases in the coming section of the. We first talk about malaria. The pathogen that cause the malaria is Plasmodium malaria, which is a parasitic protozoa. Protozoa is microorganism, or it is an one-celled animals. Malaria is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquito. The people who infected with malaria will have the sick symptoms such as shivering, fever, and sweating. It is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquito. About dengue. Pathogen that causing dengue is a virus called dengue virus. The vector for the transmission of dengue virus is Aedes aegypti mosquito. The symptoms of dengue is joint pain, fever, headache, and watery eyes. Dengue is transmitted in between the people, through the mosquito bite. This is about Zika. The pathogen that causes the Zika is Zika virus. The vector that bring the Zika virus into the transmission is Aedes aegypti and albopictus mosquitoes. The symptoms of the Zika are joint pain, fever, headache, rashes, and red eyes. Transmission of the Zika is by the mosquito bite. Aedes aegypti mosquito, and Aedes albopictus mosquito. This is about the cholera. The pathogen that cause the cholera is Vibrio cholera bacteria. Fly is the vector that bring the Vibrio cholera bacteria into the transmission. The symptoms of the cholera are diarrhea and vomiting. Contaminated food and water by the fly is the matter that bring cholera into transmission. This is about typhoid. The pathogen that cause typhoid is Salmonella typhi bacteria. Fly and cockroach are the vector that bring the typhoid bacteria into the transmission. Symptoms of the typhoid is fever, intestinal bleeding, red rashes on thorax and abdomen. Contaminated food and water by the fly is the matter that bring typhoid into transmission. This is about the leptospirosis. The pathogen that cause leptospira is Leptospira sp bacteria. The vector that brings the Leptospira bacteria into the transmission is the rat. The symptoms of the leptospirosis is fever, headache, muscle pain, red eyes, rashes, vomiting, and diarrhea. The transmission of leptospirosis is due to contaminated soil, food, and water by rat. Here, we will see how the vectors spread diseases. Let's check the following examples to see how the vector spread diseases. This for the discussion is the 1st transmission of leptospirosis, it is by rat. The 2nd, transmission of dengue, it is by mosquito. The 3rd, transmission of cholera, it is by fly. We first see the transmission of leptospirosis, by rat. Firstly, a rat moves in the area with the water contaminated with Leptospira bacteria. The rat then is infected by the bacteria. The rat then transmitted the bacteria into another water. When an individual who swallows the contaminated water, or his eyes splashed with the contaminated water, or his wound exposed to the contaminated water, will infected by the bacteria. This is how the leptospirosis transmitted by rat. Now, we see the transmission of dengue, by mosquito. The transmission of dengue is start with bites a patient who infected with dengue virus. This mosquito is Aedes aegypti mosquito. The mosquito keeps the pathogens in its salivary glands. The mosquito then sucks the blood of another healthy individual and releases its saliva into the individual body to avoid blood clots. The infection spreads to the body of the individual. After a few days later, the individual sick with dengue. This is about the transmission of dengue. Now, we see the transmission of cholera, it is by fly. The transmission of cholera starts with a fly land on faces that consist of pathogens. The fly then carries the pathogens on its body. The fly land on a food and transfer pathogens to the food. Human eats the contaminated food and infected by the pathogens. This is about the cholera by fly. This topic is about mechanism to avoid transmission of infectious disease. The mechanism to avoid transmission of infectious disease can be divided into 3 stages. The primary stage is about health improvement. This is executed before the infection. The secondary stage is the treatment of sickness. This is executed after the infection. The tertiary stage is control and protect. This 3 stages of mechanism to avoid transmission of infectious disease will be detailed in the coming section of the lesson. We first talk about the primary stage, health improvement. We can improve the level of health by maintaining cleanliness of self, family, household, and sanitation system. We can improve body endurance by getting vaccine injections or immunization by children, food operators, and pilgrims. Perform a regular health check. Practice a healthy lifestyle, for example, exercise, and have a balanced diet. The secondary stage is treatment of sickness. We may provide early treatment for patients. We must separate patients from other people. The tertiary stage, control and protect. We can control the vector population by destroying breeding grounds of vectors. Enforce laws by charging fines to the person who have violate the rule, spray to destroy larvae. Protect the host by wear the thick and long-sleeved clothing when outing. And install mosquito nets, or use mosquito repellent. We have completed the topic 1 of the lesson.